Hi, Abba. This is so wonderful to see you again. We were both on a break. We were both having an amazing time in the last couple of weeks. And there is one thing that I really want to share with you and with everyone out there that I experienced when I was in Bangkok. So, when I went there, I went on a conference from the university that I had just graduated from. And they had a few sessions on AI, of course, and on cultural intelligence. And in one of these sessions that they held about AI, we had a guest. His name is Tarif. He's the CEO of a rather new platform, a new AI tool, actually, an app that organizations can use predominantly inside Asia. And this tool is called happily.ai. And the goal of this tool is to increase employee satisfaction and to have a positive impact on organizational culture. And I loved Tarif's presentation because he was talking about the neuroscientific findings that are behind the creation of happily.ai when it comes to biases, when it comes to motivation, intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation. And he spoke a lot about dynamics in organizations when employees don't necessarily dare to share open feedback with their managers, of course, specifically in Asia, right? So he was sharing a few screens of the app, how you use it, and how it creates the findings. And it was very interesting to watch until it reached a point where he called someone onto the stage. This person has founded a few businesses inside of Thailand. And this person was talking a lot about his use case of happily.ai in his organization. He said that he introduced happily.ai because he didn't get the necessary feedback from his employees that he was seeking. He was trying to understand why people kept resigning from his business, and they kept leaving at around the year mark or 2 years, and he wanted them to stay longer, but he couldn't find out why. So he started using Happily AI, and because Happily AI allows people to give their feedback in an anonymous way, he says that he was able to retrieve the data, get the insights that he wasn't able to get in any other way. And I thought, okay, well, this is great. So I raised my hand when it was time for questions and answers. And I asked him, so now that you've used happily.ai or that you are using it, what is your personal gain from this app? What is your personal learning for your own leadership? And he was taking a moment to think about that. And then after some time, he finally shared, well, I actually now do less or seek less feedback conversations with my employees because I'm completely relying on happily.ai. And I was looking at Tarif, and I was actually expecting him to jump up in that moment and to say, wait a moment, that's not the goal of happily.ai, that leadership members conclude that direct human interaction, face-to-face or one-on-one feedback conversations would no longer be necessary. And in that moment, I thought of you, and I thought, this is something I have to discuss with Abba. So please let me know what you think about this.
It's absolutely shocking that he didn't get up and say something because the tool is not being used properly. Like, it's great that they're getting a lot of feedback because that's something they didn't get before. But that feedback should be used to be able to have better conversations with employees, to build stronger relationships with them in person so that they can nurture a better environment in the company so that people stay. And this is a common challenge I see with people using AI tools. They're not fully understanding how to use them in a way that combines all the values humans have with the technology that allows them to process the information to enable them to be better leaders. And to be honest with you, and if I say it bluntly, it's a bit of laziness because it's almost like they've got the feedback that they think they need and they don't need to have any challenging conversations because they have the feedback that they need. But they also probably don't realize that there's so much context that they're not getting from that feedback. Like, I can't imagine the feedback that they're getting has got all context or has got like on what, how much information are they actually getting that fits into a context that they can address. Surely they need to ask more questions about this feedback, whether that's in a forum scenario because it's anonymous. So maybe they don't want to pinpoint anybody, obviously. Maybe it's in fact reason to have kind of like a, what's it called, a town hall with their staff and say, this is the feedback we've got, let's talk about it, so that they can go deeper and not just rely on scratching the surface of some random feedback they've got. They don't even know who's given it and under what context. So in this case, I feel like it's a really good example of using a tool badly. It comes back to really understanding what AI is there for and how it can help us, and not just use it to cross something off your to-do list and shun responsibility, but how can we use it to actually do better things, to make greater impact, to amplify an environment that we want to build. So it just goes to show that if you are looking to employ any AI tool in your business, whether you're working alone or in an organization, learn to understand what these tools are good for and how they can enhance the relationship between humans while doing what they can do best, which is processing a large amount of information very quickly.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think we have to differentiate between taking the input that I get, or actually the output that I get from an app like that, the feedback at face value, but then also to consider, all right, okay, now it seems that my employee is all right because they are putting all of this positive feedback in there, but there is more behind it. Because of course, it's also just a fraction of time that the employee spends with that app, right? So maybe they are giving the feedback in a moment where they do feel great. Maybe they are giving the feedback also after some time as a part of their routine. So potentially they just know, okay, now it's my pulse survey time again, so I'm just giving my answers here. But obviously we are also more complex beings than that, right? And I would not be surprised if, for example, the need for recognition that employees have is getting lost entirely when it's only feedback that is given through an app. So if I, as a manager, would, for example, use an app like that to give feedback to my employee, then of course the employee does receive that in written form through an app. But the next catch is that an application like happily.ai also aims to increase the emotional intelligence of its users. So there was one example where an employee was phrasing a feedback message to their manager, and then happily.ai gave feedback to the employee and said, hey, you could tweak this a little bit like this, and then it's even more appreciative. So the employee then sent off that email as it was reviewed by AI. And the next thing that you see on the screen is that happily.ai says, oh, you just increased your emotional intelligence score by 150 points. And when I saw that, I thought, how? Because it was the AI that was rewriting that message. And the employee actually didn't learn anything about their own emotions. They didn't learn anything about how to reflect. They didn't learn anything about their manager, actually. So there was no self-awareness and no other awareness in that whole process. If at all, maybe the employee learned this nice phrase by heart that they might now be using in ongoing conversations. But if an employee can send AI rewritten feedback to their manager, the manager can do exactly the same, right? The employee will know that. So the employee might not even know whether the feedback they receive through happily.ai is even genuine or not.
It's almost like the two people who are communicating are not even communicating. It's like their alter egos or like a different version of themselves communicating with each other without even considering the actual human being, which is such a mistake because we don't live in a virtual world. Maybe 5 years from now, everything will be virtual and we will be living in a virtual world. I don't know. And I really hope that doesn't happen. Do you remember when this game came out many, many years ago? This was when I was in university, called Second Life.
Oh, yeah, that was huge.
It was huge, but then it died.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not sure why it died. Maybe it's something we should look into as we've come back into this world. But I think that there's nothing worse than living a second life in a world that we're not really living in. And doing what happily AI has resulted in people doing, and I don't think obviously this was the intention of the app, because obviously it wasn't, but the way
Mm.
people are ending up using it, they're not bothering to really take value from what this tool has to offer. And to be honest with you, it just comes down to laziness. It just comes down to laziness, because dealing with employees, dealing with performance reports, dealing with emotional complexities in a workplace is time consuming and energy draining. And if you're not in love with your job and you don't really care that much about what you're doing, it's very easy to kind of fob it off to AI and just close your timesheet, get your job done, and go home. Doesn't help anyone. Not in the short term, it will get stuff off your to-do list and will get you home in time, maybe. But in the long term, it's not helping anybody. And it's in fact making you less emotionally intelligent, because you're not standing up and having that conversation that you need to have to make a genuinely better environment. So it comes back to really thinking about tools and how we're using them, and taking the time and energy to be literate on what these tools really mean beyond technology, beyond their capabilities. What are they doing to human relationships? What are they doing to the environment we are going to day to day? What are they doing to our brains? What does it mean for our future selves? Like, this is why we call this podcast, Who Do We Want to Be? Do we want to be that person who just communicates via apps and doesn't really have any interpersonal skills anymore? We
Mm.
talked in a different episode about how children are very comfortable saying sorry on an app, but they don't want to say sorry in person because they just haven't done it before and it's hard. So again, let's really think about who we want to be as these new tools come into our lives, and we must use them. But let's not let them take over the beauty of being human and the basis of which our relationships are built. And honestly, what is life today? It is our relationships, right? It is who we
Yeah.
interact on a daily basis. This is our life. We don't live in isolation. And I don't know about you, but I'm sure you're the same. I don't want to live in a second life game, you know? And let's all work towards not doing that.
This is such an amazing comparison with the Second Life. And it reminds me of a conversation, actually, multiple conversations that I had with Gen Z members lately, because I wanted to understand what they are actually seeking when it comes to their workplace and to their relationship with the manager. I was asking them, what is a good relationship with your manager? What are you expecting your manager to do? And the conversations that I had were very reflected from the Gen Z members' sides, and they were saying, well, for one, we know that managers, especially older generations, they don't have the best perception of us because they know that we are constantly on apps, that our life basically happens online. It's like the second life. So what Gen Z members are really seeking is the actual human interaction. They want to be taught by people who know more than them. They want to have mentors. They want to be able to ask more senior staff members for feedback, qualitative feedback on the work that they delivered. They want to learn from them. For example, what is good time management? How do I do certain things? What is project management? And they don't want to learn that from yet another app. They don't want to necessarily learn that from ChatGPT or any other tool. They know how to use the tools. They potentially also know how to get all of that information. But what they really seek, because they are lacking it right now, is the human interaction. And this is also why I completely confirm and support that using apps like happily.ai or any of the many others that are currently available is a great starting point to collect data that, especially shy employees would not share with you otherwise. But the most important, the really crucial part is to take those insights and utilize them for even more valuable human interaction.
And I feel like this conversation is going to be needed. We need to have this conversation so often, because it's so easy to hide behind technology, because these tools are making us lazy. if we let them. Because, and you can't really blame the individuals either, right? We're all very time poor, we're all stretched, we all, just want to get stuff done and have some downtime. So it's very easy to just kind of let the AI do what it's doing and be like, I can close my book and go home now, or close my laptop and go home now. But this is the very thing we need to be very critical about and careful about, how we do it and why we do it and when we do it. Because I know for sure, like, I'm so happy to hear that these Gen Z people want human interaction. I would have thought, because all they know is tech and screens and their phones and social media, they would be quite resistant to really going out there and wanting human interaction. So I'm so happy to hear that you're finding that they actually want the human interaction. And that is so great, because if we don't give them that, what are they going to give the next generation? Like, I can't imagine a population thriving with no real human interaction. We're all going to turn into some form of robots. It's true. So let's not let that happen. And it's really down to us, because we are the last generation who actually saw a world without the internet, without technology. There was a point where I didn't have a phone growing up.
Crazy, huh?
Last generation. So whatever we have, let's make sure that while we embrace all these tools and use them to save us time, money, energy, and amplify all our gifts, we also, look at these tools and use them with a pinch of salt, and not let them take over our souls. If I say it in a bit of an exaggerated way, right? Like, let's not let them take over our souls and what it means to being human. And I mean, I see it sometimes in myself. Like, sometimes I'm like, I'm just going to write them an email and be done with it, or I'm just going to leave a voice note and be done with it, but no, I need to have the conversation, because that's the only way I can build a stronger relationship. This is a very, very interesting example that you brought up today, and it does highlight a very important aspect of technology that we really need to be mindful of.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we want to go back to this initial question of who do we want to be, my answer for today would be, I want to be someone who knows my intentions, and I want to follow my intentions by using the right tools, but also only to a certain extent, for as long as my actual intention can still be fulfilled. And I think that is what is lacking many times, that we are looking at a specific tool without necessarily being aware of what is the goal that I want to reach with this. That oftentimes gets lost in translation, in the rush of the day, as you were saying, in the need of just letting it be completed, being able to go home. So who do you want to be, and how do you want to act with the tools that you have available? So I think that's a great question for all of us to reflect on this week. And I'm very much looking forward to being here with you again in a week from now.